audio. So there should be audio now. Let us know. Thank you, Ofonime, for pointing that to us on Facebook. Let us know now if there is audio. I believe there should be now. Okay. All right. So we just finished praying just for our YouTube and Facebook audience. So we just finished praying and we were about okay, they confirmed that there's audio now. And we're about to just get into the study of today. So we're talking about the month of July, that it's been very productive.
Yeah.
I love the subject that we've been talking about, stewardship. Stewardship.
Yeah.
Not only has it been of blessing to those that are listening to us, but even us,
Yes.
we've just been blessed.
God's word is for everyone.
Yeah.
Including the preachers, our teachers.
Yes, it's been a blessing just applying these words in our lives, and it's just awesome. So we're going to be continuing our study on financial stewardship, and today we're going to give you the first principle. We started talking about that last week, right? The first principle. If as a believer, even non-believers too, they do it in one way or the other.
Yeah.
The first thing you want to settle when it comes to your finances is, who is the owner, and how do I continually acknowledge the true owner?
Yes.
That's question number one. And that question, if you are able to answer it and you're able to keep on doing it, your finances will be blessed.
That's right.
Yeah. So who is the true owner of it? So we have been looking at this text in Luke chapter 12. You guys remember Luke chapter 12, where we looked at the parable of the rich fool. So I'm going to quickly read it, and then we will go ahead. We're going to be sharing some principles with you this week on how you can establish this first principle when it comes to your finances. So Luke 12 from verse 13 to 21 says, "Then someone called from the crowd, 'Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me.'" So notice that there was a ownership dispute. You understand, that was going on between this guy. I want you guys to pay attention as we read to the concept of ownership that goes on throughout this passage.
Yeah.
So first of all, it started with a ownership dispute between two brothers. And then Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such as that?" Then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed.
Yeah.
Life is not measured by how much you own, that you own."
That's right.
So that second mention of ownership there. First of all, ownership dispute. And then Jesus says it's not measured by how much you own.
Yeah.
So start thinking about, when I look at that, I just say, if life is not measured by how much I own, I'd rather just let God own everything.
God owns it, whether we acknowledge it
or not. But I'm saying, let me just acknowledge that God owns everything, because I think that one is a better measure of life.
That's right.
You understand? So, and then it says, then he told them a story. Now, notice that it started with the ownership disputes. Jesus says that life is not measured by what you own. Then he tells a story.
Yeah.
And you should already know that story is also going to illustrate ownership.
Yeah.
In one way or the other, or greed, ownership, this concept.
Yeah.
It said a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. Then he said to himself, notice the pronouns being used, himself.
Yeah.
What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, I know I will tear down my barns, can you see?
Right.
And build bigger ones. I will have room enough for all my crops.
Right.
Then he said, okay, I will have room enough, to store all my wheat and other goods. Then I will sit back and say to my soul, or myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Yes, a person, then God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Who will get everything who will own everything that you worked for?
Yeah.
Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God or be rich towards God. So you see that through that thing, I mean, through the thing, the ownership thing is there.
Yeah, he kept laying claim to, starting from his possessions, his barns, his plans, his future, his outcome, and I guess there's really nothing wrong in doing that when we make plans, when we make assessment of things that has been committed into our hands. But where we go wrong is when God is not first. When things are not done from God's perspective, when things are not done under God's direction, and ultimately when we lay claim to everything and we don't give God the ownership of what truly belongs to him. And the height of it was, he said, I will say to myself,
my soul,
forgetting that, he does not own his life. And that's when God had to respond.
Yeah, the guy, there was no mention of God at all in the whole thing. It was just hi, me, myself, what I'll do. He forgot this important thing that we said is the first principle of financial stewardship. He forgot that God is the owner and he's just a caretaker. So let's apply it to our lives. The first principle of financial stewardship is this acknowledgement of God as your source and the owner. That's where it starts from. Your job is not your source.
That's right.
Your business is not your source. Your parents are not your source.
Yeah.
Your church is not your source. Your friends are not your source.
Yeah.
The economy of the nation is not your source.
Yeah.
Your source is God. Because he's the one that gave you life in the first place. He's the one that gave you energy. He's the one that gave you intelligence. He's the one that keeps you in this world, which is what that guy forgot and said, today your soul is going because you do not know, you do not acknowledge me as the owner of it all.
Right.
So everybody here, we need to say it say it very loudly to yourself. God is my source and my owner and the owner of everything that I am and that I will have and I will ever have and that I have.
That's right. God is the source.
God is the source and the owner. So the question now is, it's good to say it. You understand? But one of the things that I've seen that God does is that, he puts things, because he knows our weakness, that we tend to forget very easily. We tend to forget. Like that source thing. It's very easy to forget it based on how things are happening in your life. Maybe challenges come, you need money, or even when you have a lot of money, it's very easy to forget, which is what Deuteronomy chapter 8, right? From verse 15 downwards. Where it says that, okay, now when you've built goodly houses, you've built all these things, your silver, your gold is multiplied and all that.
You will remember
the
Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power
to get well. So it's trying to, you got to remember. Why does he have to tell us to remember? Because there's a tendency to forget.
That's right.
So one of the things that we have seen is that because God wants these things to be constantly on the forefront of our minds when it comes to our finances, this God source, this God ownership, he has put systems in place that allows us to remember it. And we have to adopt that system into our lives.
Right.
And that system goes back to the Old Testament before the law of Moses came.
Yes.
It went to the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about these systems that
Yeah.
God has put in place and how we can apply it. That's what we're focusing on this week. And we'll be doing it under 7 P's.
Right. And before we go into the 7 P's, something that just came to my mind is, you see, God is the source, and God is the one who now, as the source, he also provides channels through which his blessings flow. So what we are more acquainted with is this channels. So a channel could be your job, a channel could be gifts that people give you, a channel could be, maybe what you're getting as a result of you exercising your talents or whatever, or your investments. So God brings different channels. He opens up different channels, but all these channels are flowing from a source, but we are more in touch with the channels, and we tend to get attached or get focused on the channels, not knowing that God is the source. Once that source dries up, guess what? The channels will continue to flow. But God's ultimate plan, where I'm going is this: God's ultimate plan is for you to be able to operate in multiple different channels. But he's got to be able to trust you. If it's one channel that is flowing right now, he's got to be able to trust you in that channel. And he's got to be able to know that you would recognize that he is the owner and he is the source, distributing through all these different channels. And another thought that comes to my mind is, it is so freeing when I think about the fact that God is my source. Now, the source is higher than the channel. So I cannot be restricted to one channel. If one channel dries up, as long as I'm connected to the source, he will open up multiple channels. God has 1,000,000 and more channels, to be able to get to you whatever you need for your needs to be met. So it is operating from a higher plane. When we get down this principle of ownership and the source.
Very powerful. So what we want to do right now is just go through the Bible and just look at the ways that some practices that helps us to acknowledge the source and to keep that at the back of our minds. And we're going to see how God, blesses us through that. So let's get into it. We'll do what we can do today, and we'll continue the next time, the next broadcast. So we saw that from the Old Testament, people created ways in which they can remember God as the source. The first example, we'll just use some example before we go into it. So the first example is Abraham. So in the book of Genesis, right, Abraham, I think it was Genesis chapter 14 from verse 17. So Abraham returned from the victory. He went to war, returned from victory. Several nations were coming against him, and they won, right? And they got a lot of goods, properties, money, resources from that war. And then just after it, the priest of God, Melchizedek, shows up and blessed Abraham and said, "Blessed be Abraham of the Most High." So first of all, when it's Abraham of the Most High, meaning God owns Abraham.
That's right.
Right? And then he called the Most High the possessor of heaven and earth. So that means God owns the heavens and the earth. So God owns Abraham. And God also owns what? The heavens and the earth. And blessed him. And then who has given him victory That's what Melchizedek was saying. Who has given him victory over all his enemies?
Yeah.
So there are three things we see about God there. He owns us. He owns everything.
Yeah.
And everything that we get
That's right.
is because he's the one who gave it to us. He's the source of it all.
Yeah.
So when after Melchizedek did that with Abraham, guess what Abraham did? And they said that in verse, he said, then Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods that he had recovered. He separated a tenth.
That's right.
After Melchizedek blessed him, talking about God's ownership, God being the source, then Abraham gave a tenth. Now, people usually say, wow, there's this question about what we call the tithe, right? That people say, are we supposed to tithe in the New Testament? We addressed that in the last broadcast, but we're going to go a little bit deeper. The first thing that would be good to say in this place is that nobody told Abraham to do this. Melchizedek did not say, okay, now, blessed be Abraham of the Most High God. Now give me your tithes. Give me a tenth of everything that you have gotten. There was no demand from Abraham. There was no law then. It was just something that flowed from Abraham's heart. It was something that probably had observed it before being done. Maybe, from his ancestors, Adam and, and all that they thought. They said, okay, this is one. And he just thought, let me give a tenth. Let me give a tenth of this thing to God. So one key thing that you need to know for those who say that tithing or this principle of giving a portion of what God has brought you to God is based on the Old Testament law of Moses. The first thing I would like to say is that it predated the law of Moses, because Abraham do it not as a response to law, not because he was afraid he was going to be cursed, not because of anything, but just because of his appreciation for what God has done and his honor and respect of God being his source and be the owner. That's why Abraham did it. Now, the other question that should it be 10%, we're going to address that later, because Abraham chose 10, right? That's what Abraham chose. Okay. Then we fast forward to Abraham's grandchild, Jacob. Jacob was running from his brother Esau, that he was going to kill him. Then he gets to a place and sleeps. And then he saw a vision of angels ascending and descending and all that. And it's like, wow, this is the place of God and all that. He had an encounter with God there. And then he made a vow to God and said, God, if you will prosper me where I'm going. At that time, he had nothing. But he said, if you prosper me where I'm going, if you will be my God, if you know what? If you be my source, he said, I will give you a tenth of everything that comes. So who told Jacob to do it? God didn't tell him to do it. He was
seen it from
practice, but it was a response of his heart, to God. So you see those two examples, right? Before the law. And then, of course, later in the law, Moses instituted it. But even like we explained in our last broadcast, when Moses instituted it, there was the letter of the law and there was the spirit of it. The spirit of it was not, oh yeah, bring your 10% or you'll be cursed. No, the spirit of it was, if God delivered you from Egypt, Israel, brought you to this great land flowing with milk and honey, and it blesses you, acknowledge the ownership of God and the source of God, so that it continues to be a partner with you by bringing the first and the best to his priest or to his house, so that his interest, God has interest in helping the poor, interest on this earth right now of proclaiming the gospel to people everywhere right now, so that his interest can continue and it can be a financial partner.
Right. So the question is, how are you partnering with God in your finances? Do your finances show that you're a partner with God? Do your finances show that God has ownership? We can easily tell. You just go to your bank account and look at your activity. And just see, is it representative that God is a partner in your finances? Because that's where the rubber meets the road. Bible says, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about in the last broadcast, it's a heart issue. Abraham, it was a response from his heart. Jacob, it was a response from his heart. And again, this whole concept of recognizing God as ownership is really for our protection.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we talked about several, broadcasts ago, when we begin to store up things in this world, when we begin to focus our attention on just material riches and get materialistic, we are exposed to corruption, we're exposed to loss, we're exposed to all kinds of things, because the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of who is in control, who have
Yeah.
we yielded control. And the way we show who has control is by constantly acknowledging
Yeah.
and recognizing this ownership, and bringing the first and the best
Yeah.
to God.
Yes.
Not the last,
Yes.
but
Very
the
good.
first and the best.
Yeah. So we've seen that it was done by Abraham, it was done by Jacob, and so on. And then Moses put it in the law, right?
Mhm.
So what about when Jesus Christ came and fulfilled the law?
Yeah.
Does it continue? Right. This principle of separating a portion, the
Yeah.
amount, the percentage, we'll talk about percentage in a moment, right?
Mhm.
In the Old Testament, it was 10%,
Yeah.
that he told them to do. That's what the tithe meant. But in the New Testament, does it continue? This thing of separating a portion of
Yeah.
your income
Yeah.
to God? I say yes, because if you look at 1 Corinthians 16, verse 1, starting from verse 1, let me read it to you. And if you are following us, you can go to 1 Corinthians 16 and read from verse 1 there. Let's start from verse 2. Sorry, verse 2. Well, 1 is fine. From verse 1. It says, "Now, regarding your question about money being collected for God's people in Jerusalem, you should follow the same procedure I gave to the churches in Galatia." So that means Paul gave procedures,
Yeah.
a way for collecting money
Mhm.
to support the mission,
Yeah.
you understand, of the church
Right.
to different churches.
Mhm.
What was the procedure? Verse 2. On the first day of each week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned.
Yeah.
Don't wait until I get there and then try to collect it all at once.
Yeah.
Why first day of the week?
Mhm.
Why first? And why is he saying make preparation so that it's always a portion?
Yeah.
So that it's not going to be like when I get there, you are trying to get everything. By that time, you will have spent it, right? Or some other thing. He said, set aside a portion. So
Yeah.
unequivocally, I can
Yeah.
say to you clearly that the concept of proportionate giving, which
Yeah.
the tithe in the Old Testament represented,
Mhm.
continues in the New Testament.
Yeah.
What is proportionate giving? Proportionate giving is giving a percentage, a portion of your income
Yeah.
to acknowledge God as your partner and as your source,
Yes.
giving it towards what God is doing on this earth.
Right.
And Paul was telling them right here that he told the churches to do that. Okay, so we'll deal with the question of, because he didn't tell them 10% here.
Yeah.
It just said separate a portion.
Mhm.
So in the New Testament, let me say it for everybody that clear to hear. In the New Testament, there is no direct command like that. The only one we have is when Jesus said, you
Yeah.
tithe of this, you tithe of that.
Yeah.
You ought to have done that.
Right.
But there are weightier matters of the law that you should
Yeah.
pay attention to that. But there's no direct command in the New Testament that we
Yeah.
should continue tithing like they did in the Old Testament.
Mhm.
But even though there's no direct command, like I said, the principle and the spirit
Yeah.
of God being first continues.
Yes.
And this practice of proportionate giving or percentage giving,
Right.
still exists in the New Testament
Yes.
from this passage that I just shared with you from 1
Right.
Corinthians 16, verse 1 to 2. So go underline it and read it in all your translations, your own Bible, and see there that proportionate giving still continues in the New Testament.
That's right.
Right. So now let's go and talk about how you can put this in your life by looking at this piece. Like, how do you make this a part of your life such that the first principle of financial stewardship is in operation in your life? We'll talk about that, and then we will maybe we'll talk about two of the P's,
Right.
and then we will continue the next time.
So, I mean, Second Corinthians 8 and verse 7. Um, I'll just read it. It says, since you excel in so many ways in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, and your enthusiasm, and your love from us, I want you to excel also in this gracious act of giving. So, this was in Paul's letter to the Corinthian church, encouraging them that even as they seek to excel in different areas, that there's one area that they also need to excel in, and that is that area of giving.
Yeah.
So meaning that, giving is something that we can be progressive about, we can increase in. He referred to it as the gracious act of giving. And there's actually a grace to give, because in our own selves, the human nature is very selfish. The human nature wants to withhold. The flesh wants to withhold. But you see, as we stay in submission and as we stay in obedience to the Holy Spirit, He will tell us, how to give. He will tell us. In fact, Bible says, let each man give as he proposes in his heart. So the Holy Spirit will instruct your heart how to give when you actually listen and you're obedient. You will be able to excel in these areas. And one practical way is to set goals. Maybe you've not been giving consistently. You can make a goal right now and say, okay, I am going to start by giving consistently, and put a percentage on it. Um, you can start with 5%. You can start with 10%. You can start with even more than 10%. I know in our lives, we've always, set that goal of giving more than 10%, and as you excel in it, there's a blessing. There's a blessing that comes with giving. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so two things I'd like to address. The first one, someone is asking, Olaiwola is asking if they can ask questions. So please feel free, ask the question and we will check it. The second thing is that I would like us to look at the piece in a what do you call it? Like one by one, so that they can remember it.
I thought we talked about the first P.
So the first P, so the first P, just for you to remember, the first P for putting this into your life, this acknowledgement of God's source, is priority. Priority, meaning that before you spend anything, adopt this system. Is the GSS system. Give, save, spend. Give, save, spend. So when you receive any kind of income, because this first principle of acknowledgement of God as a source and owner, as the owner is paramount. The first thing you do is you separate a portion of it out that you are going to give. It doesn't mean that you give it at that moment. If you have opportunity to give it at that moment, give it. But you can also separate it, like Paul said. He said, put it aside. So you can separate it to one side and then to a time that you're going to be giving it. So that's priority. That's honor the Lord with your substance.
And the first
fruit of all your increase. Then your barns will be filled with plenty. Your presses will pour out with new wine. Proverbs 3 verse 9. So first, don't put God last. Don't arrange God around your money. Arrange your money around God. Prove to God that He's first. Prove to God that money is a servant that you use you use in serving God, not the one that rules you. So the first P is prioritization. Okay. And then the second P, we talked about it, is percentage, right? All right. Percentage. So separate out a percentage. We already showed you that in the Old Testament, Abraham did 10, Jacob did 10.
Yeah.
The what do you call it? In the tithing system,
Yeah.
they did 10. In the New Testament, sometimes some did all 100. They gave
it all.
all. The widow, the widow that gave the widow's mite did 100%.
Right.
So, but the principle is that you must separate a percentage. So, so let's what you are addressing, the practical wisdom which people need to know is that in the New Testament, there's no hard and fast rule that it has to be 10%. Right? We generally say that, come on, Old Testament people, they were not saved. Jesus didn't, die for them on the cross. I mean, he's given us so much. We should at least try to match, you understand, what they did in the Old Testament, right? But if maybe you are just starting out and that 10% seems so hard for you, just pray before God and separate a percentage, 2%, 5%.
Start with something.
Start with something.
But be consistent in it.
Yeah. Just start with that thing. But start practicing this proportionate giving. Proportionate giving. Start it from wherever you can start from. Right? That is a percentage. And then you explain progressive. That's the third P. Progressive. So when you start with a percentage, let's say you start with 5%, right? That's what you could do now. Then, because that passage that you read, Paul said, seek to excel in this grace of giving. Seek to excel in this grace of giving. Always set a new percentage every year or periodically. You could say, I'm going to do 5% right now for 2023. But by 2024, I'm upping this to 10%. And then, by 2025, this is going to become 12% and all that. And, one of our prayers is that, God will bless us so much that by the time we are, living this world, we're giving over 90%. And the remaining 10% or so is too much to handle all our personal needs. But the rest, but we're giving it to honor God. You understand? And bless him. So in other words, seek to increase that percentage. Seek to excel. You understand? In giving. Don't just stay with giving little and giving tips to God. Seek to excel. So that's the third P. Should we do one more and then we'll wrap up with that?
So next P is, just getting into this place of plentiful. Aim for when this percentage becomes so big that the majority share of your finances is being returned to the one who gave you all in the first place. And that's what you were just talking about. 2 Corinthians 9:6. Remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop. But the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. Bible says he who sows sparingly will reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will reap bountifully. There's this principle of seed, time, and harvest. So the measure in which you give is that measure in which you're going to receive. So are you measuring or giving to God like in small cups? And that might be where you are right now. But really pray that your measure will begin to increase, because as your measure increases, your giving measure increases, your capacity to receive also increases.
So very important. And Pastor Wale, I'm going to be reading your statement in a moment. So like what you just said right now. So we talked about the 4 P's. The first one, to acknowledge God as the source. The first one is prioritization. Put God first. The second one is percentage. Give a portion. They gave 10 in the Old Testament. There's none given to us that we should give in the New Testament. God said we should give our whole life to him. Give everything to him, right? But of course, when it comes to finances, you have needs, you have all that. So separate a portion out.
Yeah.
a portion out. So start from where you can start with, but make sure that you honor that proportionate giving thing and the prioritization.
Yeah.
And then be progressive. That's the third P. Keep increasing that portion until you are even able to get to giving most of it, the majority share of that partnership that your life is producing goes to the one that gave you everything originally, the whole capital to start, that it gave you everything. And then be plentiful, like dream about giving large, dream about growing in it, excelling in it. In a sense, let that percentage continue to grow and grow. So that's what we have talked about so far.
Yeah.
So this does not say that, oh yeah, you are going to be cursed if you don't tithe. That's in the Old Testament. This does not say that you have to give 10%. No, right? That's the Old Testament practice, right? So you see the differences, right? Now let me read what Pastor. Oh wow, there's so many questions today, man. So the first one, this is Pastor Wale Oluwo. Yeah, Pastor Wale, good to see you. Pastor Wale is a very good called cousin.
Yes,
I do remember. Yeah, you remember.
Pastor Wale. Good to see you.
Yeah. Why I agree that proportionate giving is what the Old Testament taught. The examples laid by the disciples and the apostles was giving 100%. Yes, but
awesome.
Yes, they gave 100%.
Yeah.
But what we realize is that
might not be always practical.
Yes, for people, like when you're teaching people, the goal is for you to give it all.
Yeah.
But start from somewhere.
Yes.
Start from somewhere and keep on increasing it and keep on increasing it. You give your whole life, you present your body, you present your whole finances to God, and you are willing, for God to lead you in any direction. But create a system. The tithing thing, principle, proportionate giving is a system. That's what Paul was telling them in 1 Corinthians 16, 1-2. It's just a system to make sure that people do this thing. Because as a pastor or even as an individual, you know that if you don't create a system, you tend not to obey God. You tend not to keep something consistent.
Right. And even in giving God all, which I like, giving God 100%.
Yeah.
Where even when you're spending it on other things, you're giving it on, you're doing it under the direction.
Yes.
And that's what we addressed in this principle of ownership.
Yes.
Where God owns it all 100%. And you acknowledge that he owns it all 100%.
Yeah.
Now, in the distribution of it, when we talked about giving, saving, and spending, you do it under his direction. And that is still acknowledging that he owns it 100%. Yeah,
very good. And then, I'm going to go to the next one. And then also, very important that even all the other ones that you are spending, you understand? So there's the one that you give a portion, you give it to the work of God and all that. But even the one they're spending, there's a way you can spend.
Right.
Also with the same mindset that God, you are the owner. For example, if I'm paying my phone bill, I like I say, Father, we thank you, Lord, because of this, because you are the one that created, internet, phone, whatever. You are the one that gave the wisdom for these things. So, Lord, as I give it to this company, I honor you with it. I honor, and the fact that you are the one that blessed us with it. And I thank you for all that we're able to do through this phone. So there's way that even all your spending can be infused with the understanding of ownership. So let me address the second one. This is from Dr. Shalom. Does the New Testament teachings negate the pre-law practices like giving of tithes? If the principle of seed time and harvest wasn't abolished by the law, why is this tithe an issue for the New Testament church? No, the New Testament teaching did not abolish the principle of seed time and harvest or the principle of proportionate giving. No, it did not. That's what we're saying, that it still continues. But what we're saying is this, is that the tithe, the tenth, right, was something that Abraham was a practice. Abraham chose that percentage, right? And then Isaac, what Jacob did that, and then God instituted it in the law. Right. In the New Testament, there's no prescription of what percentage or what no percentage. We're supposed to give all, right, all to God. Right. But practically, so this thing is not about law.
Yes.
It is about the principle we're talking about of acknowledgement of ownership and source. That's what it is about. So just make sure that in your life, that thing is instituted in a system.
Right.
And the advice is that best place is to start it with 10%.
Yeah.
You understand? To start at 10%. But we do know certain people that they just can't start at 10%. They start from somewhere, and then they grow from there and keep on growing there until they're able to get there. So that's what we're saying regarding that.
I think it's important to separate or distinguish between principle and practice.
Yeah.
Tithing is not a principle.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Seed time and harvest is a principle.
Yeah.
Proportionate giving is a principle.
Yeah.
The fact that God owns it all is a principle.
Yeah.
So principles are foundational and they do not change with time.
Practices change.
Yeah. Practices change. So we need to understand the difference between principles and practices.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we confuse that. There are many practices in the Old Testament. Right. That if we translate them, even when they were tithing in the Old Testament, right?
Yeah.
They used to bring their animals, everything that they had, they brought it. So it was, and then, so the practices were different.
Right.
So even if you want to transfer Old Testament, we can't do it now because you will have to bring all the meat that you ordered, all the whatever, the first time. No. But the principle is what translates. The principle is the honor of God first. The proportionate giving to recognize that, right? And seed time and harvest.
Right.
That is the principle. That's what translates to the New Testament.
Yes.
And we're just saying that there are ways to practice that in the New Testament that does not negate the Old Testament. Yes. Right. So that's what we're talking about. Yeah. And then, Pastor Wale continues. He says, while this is indeed a measure of growth. Let me go. Okay, yeah. While this is a measure of growth in relationship, the minimum should be what was done in the Old Testament. Now, what I have found out is the question of money in relationship to the kingdom. So that's what I'm saying. It should be that, but sometimes people have to start from where they are. Mm-hmm. Giving has always been in the honor of the Father. But what has happened is meant. Let me show you that. What has happened is meant. What had happened is meant to get and not in view of what God said is more blessed to give. Yes, sometimes people are giving just because they want to get.
Right.
You understand? But what we're saying is that it's not what we're saying that it's the purpose of this giving is the acknowledgement of God as your source, as your owner, and as your partner. As your partner. That's what it should be. You understand? You are doing it in appreciation. Yeah. You are doing it in honor of God. You are doing it in recognition of his partnership and of him being the source.
Yes. And that's really important because when we talk about the spirit of it, tithing is not just in the giving. Yeah. It's in the act itself. Yeah. It's in the words that you utter when you're giving to God.
What's inside your
heart? The heart communication. Yeah. Like God was telling me that was like, in the kingdom, a lot of things are communicated spirit to spirit. You know how the Bible says deep calls to deep. Mm-hmm. A lot of things are coming. Sometimes you don't even have to utter words, but the spirit of the communication. So God looks at your heart. God looks at your heart. He knows why you're doing it. So it's important that our heart is in alignment with the purpose of giving, which is acknowledging God. That's the first. You're not giving so that you can receive. Yeah. I know that has been taught. Yeah. You sow so that you can reap. No. But first of all, we're giving out of our love for God. We're giving out of just acknowledging that He's owner, and we're partnering with God in our finances. And the rest is, blessing. The blessing just flows. Yeah. You don't even have to ask for the blessing. Yeah. The blessing flows.
He has blessed
unequal. Us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The manifestation of it is just, is just an offshoot of the practice.
We're just getting in alignment. We're not. You cannot do those things to earn. In the New Testament, He has blessed us already in Christ with all spiritual blessings in the heavenly places.
To that flow.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. It's just like this. It's like it's like you have electricity in your house. It's already there.
Yes.
Right? It's already there, but you got to get plugged in into the power source. Yeah. Even though it's there, you might not enjoy it if you don't get plugged in. Right. So how you get plugged in is through faith. It's through honor. So you just connect with God. You just connect with God and acknowledge His partnership.
Yes.
And then you will see the blessing. And all those things that were written in Malachi, even though the curse that was in Malachi does not apply to us, because Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, Galatians 3:13. But the blessing of Abraham belongs to us.
Yeah.
So when God says, when you practice this thing of acknowledging me as your source, He said, I will open the windows of heaven and I will pour you out such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive. In other words, it will just keep on continuing.
Yeah.
It will be perpetual.
Yeah.
And then He said, I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, so that I will not destroy the fruit of your ground. That blessing belongs to us.
Yes.
Right? What He's saying is that because you are now my partner, right? In final, you are returning, a part of my initial capital.
Yeah.
You are constantly returning it to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to protect that partnership.
Yeah.
I'm going to protect that thing. I'm going to stand and rebuke the devourer for your sake, so that it will not destroy the fruit of your ground.
Yes.
I'm going to stand and do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank God, that's one of the blessings that we have enjoyed, of God standing and fighting and protecting,
Yes.
right? The partnership that we have with Him.
That's right.
Yeah. So, wow, it's been very great. We're going to continue next time, Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll be back and continue the other piece. So remember, prioritization,
Yes.
percentage, progressive, and plentiful. We'll bring the other piece when we come back the next time. All right. So
till then, keep glowing.
Keep glowing. All right. So we will see you guys later. God bless you all. Keep glowing.